Before we get too deep into tonight's event, I do just want to attend to some general structure. I want to thank both Mei-mei Berssenbrugge and Simone White for being with us, and I want to thank all of you tuning in as well. I also want to thank everyone at the Poetry Project who is making sure this event runs as smoothly and thoughtfully as possible, and hopefully without any malicious intrusion. So thank you to Matt D'Angelo, Corey Hutchinson, Nicole Wallace, and Laura Henriksen. Corey is going to drop a link for Zoom FAQs into the chat now. We're going to keep this public chat open in case anyone wants to express accolades or admiration or just to say hello. Your microphones are switched off for the time being, and you're welcome to keep your video camera either on or off. Please just note that this event is being recorded, so if your camera is on, your face may be visible at some point in the archived video of this event. In the upper left corner of the Zoom screen, I also want to note that there's a link for a live transcription through Otter AI, in case anyone may appreciate having access to that feature. We're doing our best to maintain safer space within this digital perimeter, and I'll ask Corey now to share with everyone our statement of safer space. If you do receive any unwanted private communication in the course of this event, please just chat any of the Poetry Project staff identified with the appellation staff, and we'll get that taken care of right away. If we were gathering tonight, as we have for 50 years, in shared place as well as time, we would be in the parish hall of St. Mark's Church. We are committed to continuously and critically engaging the history of our presence in this particular space. And as part of that, we would like to acknowledge that our venue, as well as the place I'm speaking from tonight, is built upon unceded Indigenous lands, specifically the territory of the Lenape people. We recognize the continual displacement and violence perpetrated against Indigenous people and people of color by the US, and are aware that these kinds of acknowledgements can be misused as stand-ins for actual decolonization work, which is something for us to bear in mind as we go forward in our ongoing commitment to accountability, reparation, and equity. We invite you to join us in this work from all of the different places where you are, and are sharing another resource in the chat, a map through nativeland.ca, not as an endorsement of this resource's completeness, but as a starting place for those we hope might feel encouraged to consider in new ways the histories of the places where we are. We usually set up the chairs together and put them away together in the parish hall at St. Mark's. And I find that even as we gather in these more remote grids, our community is still finding ways to make and hold special listening space. So thank you for being with us and for figuring it out with us. We've made all of these online programs free, and we've also continued to pay poets and artists for their readings, performances, teaching, and writing. So if you feel moved to offer your support for this work, Corey is placing a link to donate to the Poetry Project in the chat. There are so many gorgeous threads we might consider or perceive between the poems of Mei-mei Berssenbrugge and Simone White, and so many mysteries in the correspondence too that surface with re-encounter, something I appreciate deeply and differently in their respective works. The invitation into unknowing, forgetting, questioning, and the place of these inevitabilities in our various epistemologies. But the lenses I think of most especially within the context of this year are distance and time. The days are ending earlier and earlier, and very soon it will be the longest night. A day feels like a year this year, a month feels like a minute. We wonder how much longer this will be. We can't imagine where all of the time keeps going. How and why have we attenuated ourselves to new busyness, oversaturation, even as so much of the world, our earthly circumstances seem to be insisting very clearly on stopping. I've spent much time with the poems of Mei-mei Berssenbrugge and Simone White through this period of the pandemic, and that is partly because this was the first event we felt called to cancel. It was March 11th. We knew there would be a tremendous and enthusiastic crowd of listeners coming out to St. Mark's, and we were at the beginning of our fear of proximity to one another. And we rescheduled it to May, hoping this might be temporary or a situation. And finally, we rescheduled the event again, recognizing, I think, that this present tense is and will be and has been continuous. And now it is December 2nd. My experience of time and distance have shifted, continue to. I can't possibly propose that deeper reading of the work of these poets has brought anything resembling deeper understanding, and I won't do the disservice or put you through the clumsiness of attempting anything like summary. Instead, I want to extend my gratitude first to the poets for the spaces they observe, propose, and offer, which are spaces of waiting, wonder, solitude, circles, constellations, dead ends, precipices, horizons. Mei-mei Berssenbrugge writes, writing can shift the mechanism of time by changing the record, then changing the event. Simone White writes, we are here to slow time to break over us, not considering so much making poems, but where poems come from. I'm going to switch now to introducing Simone, who will read first. And while I introduce Simone, Corey will be placing links in the chat for purchasing her books and supporting her work, which is really a gift I encourage you to make to yourself. I have to admit that I find the architecture of Simone White's sentences and poetry both formidable and a pleasure. I am an appreciatively slow reader of this work, which is rich with syntactical accumulation, complexity, disobedience in the sense of a rejection and freedom from convention. Dear Angel of Death, White's most recently published book, is extensively composed with hypotaxis, lists and considerations and inversions which slide, accrete, pivot, and veer, though rarely with the neatness of manner or arrival that might be assumed by a more ordinary grammarian. Early in the book, a moment of self-reflection and self-reference, quote, in the above example of hypotaxis, weren't you her man? And later, fuck my thinking, it is so undisciplined. And at the end of the section, Doll Baby, quote, because you will not come to me, I decide I am going to tell you something. I decide that it will take a long time. The time, the syntactical time, which is also the time of reading experience, is determined definitely and abundantly by the poet. And this is a radical determination when we consider how vastly and inexhaustibly time is otherwise impressed on the poet and differently on us by forces beyond the space and period of the poem. And even as we move through these various kinds of pace, momentum, insistence, the poet is called to observe and ask, I cannot hold the idea of innovation and the idea of tradition in my mind at the same time without thinking, but how does Black writing take place if it is subject to the rigors of never resting? Simone White's other work includes Of Being Dispersed, House Envy of All of the World, and the chapbooks Unrest and Dolly with the paintings of Kim Thomas, as well as Or On Being the Other Woman, which is forthcoming from Duke in 2021. I haven't read this newest work in its entirety or manuscript, but I have very ardently followed the different publications and occasions where Simone has shared some of the writing, and I noticed that, at least through some of this work, another formal engagement of time, a preservation of compositional methods and structures like the cell phone notes app and Google Doc. These suggest, at least to me, a sense of frank betweenness, that freedom and circumlocution of mind are always relative and subject to other kinds of obligation. The windows for many of us seem never to be enough in frequency or volume, but if this poet does notice and acknowledge the inevitable lack we are within and against, she is not stuck on it. Any and all periods of time in her hands are capable of vastness, and surprise. I'm very grateful to welcome Simone White back to the Poetry Project.
Thank you so much, Kyle. I hope you can all hear me. I can see some of you. I've actually never, I don't think I've ever been on a Zoom with this many people. So that's really sweet and gratifying. And it's nice to see some very familiar faces and some black boxes that I don't know. I'm actually gonna take a moment just to say thank you to a bunch of people without whom I don't think this last manuscript could have been completed. And those include lots of Poetry Project people. When I began this manuscript, I was in Iowa, and I had just left a long time at the Poetry Project. And without the support of the project, I actually don't know what I would have done for a number of years, both in terms of, just like basic living and also being able to see so many friends read. And I just learned so much. And I just want to just say how grateful I am to the project and to the former director Stacy and to Laura and to Nicole and to Kyle and to Matt and to Corey. Also to Hannah McLaugher, who took care of my son, who was a former project intern. The project really is my family. And I'm very grateful to be among you tonight. I want to thank Elizabeth Willis, who welcomed me to Iowa and has been my friend and supporter and has checked up on me since March. Just popping in, she calls me on the phone. Nobody calls me on the phone. So sweet. I want to thank Ben Krusling and Andrew Smith, who have stuck with me from the Iowa days and have become important intellectual companions. I want to thank Al Philrice and Erica Hunt. I want to thank Joan Rotalick. I want to thank Lynn Haginian, all of whom have shown me how to live in this last couple of years and have supported me in every single step I've taken. I want to thank Araceli Girmay and Cheryl Jones Walker and Imani Perry and Andrea Harris and Erica Kaufman and David Book, all of whom have been present just about every day since March in one way or another. And with that, I guess there are many other people who are going nameless, but I just want to be able to sort of get to the place where I can say thank you to Mei-mei, who I don't know, have you ever like fallen in love with someone like instantly? That happened when I met Mei-mei, but it was partly because of her being Mei-mei, but also because I realized that something I had been hunting for in my intellectual life for a long time had been happening in Mei-mei's work for decades. And it hadn't really clicked. It didn't connect somehow. And when I read a treatise on stars for the first time or some poems from it, I realized that something that had been happening in my work for a while, for a couple of years, was just materialized there. And it's not that we do the same thing, we don't, but there's something about a particular insight that Mei-mei has carried with her in her work for a while that helped me to move forward in this work. And I think that you'll hear it tonight. And I wanna thank her really, truly and sincerely. I'm gonna read as slowly as I can, because these poems are kind of like hard to follow, I think, and they take longer than I think to read them. I'm gonna start with the last poems written. Some of you have heard this poem, I before, but I'm gonna start with it. And I'm also, after that, I'm gonna read a poem that I wrote like yesterday or the day before yesterday, which I think is a companion to it. And then I'll read some other poems from or on Being the Other Woman. A great deal of puzzling forgetting loomed, or was a pall of disorientation, occasionally pierced by incompletely appreciating mental acuity, it having been possible to remember facts and feelings in a previous period, previously, without hesitating so gravely, not being able to speak. I inhabited time densely, and so was not dead or deadened, more an aliveness or supposed anxiety that did not turn attention away, neither trembling nor luminous. It was dense and had mineral qualities, nothing of ethereal or heavens except its mean dust. Several combinations of not being able to articulate the names of objects, first panicking or shock, being puzzled, coming later in relation to initial awareness of heretofore uncontemplated blank spots, both biological, that is, neurological, not knowing the names of people or places or things in front of my students, when critically sleep deprived in the first instance, and poetic, objecting to the ordinary or orthodox way access to words had been described as a matter of grammar, Steinian, as a matter of disability, stuttering, having many words and unable to find them. Also performance of ease with respect to writing, metaphorically invention or creativity organized in terms of access to this kind of speech. Morbid fear of flying occasionally flares up, attributable to early incomplete understanding of the phenomenon of wind shear. As a child, gathering a plane could be hurled to the ground by the air. Deducing air travel cannot be completely safe, a plane or engineers not being able to respond mechanically to the force that carries the plane. The principal absurdity of being unable to overcome physics in this way, how fucked we are. Thus I imagine air disaster, mass death, and my own death to be related to a kind of unresourcefulness or lack of creativity with respect to language, or language's pathetic nature in the face of dimensions. What to call flayed vestibularity, which sounds very dramatic. Chief Keef saved me, for example. If Chief Keef has Asperger's, I'll be a monkey's uncle. Two kinds of multidimensional imagining have been troubling during the time of this work. I misunderstand grinning for granny, warring for want wreck. It doesn't matter. After all, if looking at a painting or listening to music that doesn't have words, I misunderstand, it's considered a function of excess of interpretability. Works having vectors, operational vibrations outside their physical presentation, in common understanding. Not only Black people's theoretical proposals. By virtue of being in proximity to my peculiarity, the speech of another, what comes out of the body of another, now more likely a long time ago than almost dying there until it is activated when I come to it. That is the things that actually die that we make, perhaps going wrong. Not understanding war, including the sound of a person's spasmodic coughing as a vestibulary element. Once the fundamentals of the so-called beat are established and the other effects, some horns, some amplified weed pulling, all of which can be heard on any device, I think it's interesting that the auditory register of the coughing is lumped into a bar with the 808 drop. Impossible to hear. Seconds later, the sound signaling pulmonary illness or distress, ancillary to vocal strain. No one arrives with the intention to suffocate. P look darker. I hear as penis darker. The gathering or clearing in which verbalization will begin to take place is already jammed up, warring being on the mind of this man whose lungs can't fill up with either smoke or air. He says nothing, grunts or counts, saying nothing technically, imagining a gnarled or entwined figure in which all the intentions of love are activated, all its disappointments, hovering as a fundamental magnetism in the gaps where two bodies do not touch, where perhaps the hips of two persons attached at the genitals form the angle at which two bodies move away from one another. This is also a space of containment. So a formation in the physical world of particulate refusal, its essence isn't contamination, having a problem associated with its physical properties toward destroying the connection. Its hold is touching too much rather than too little. Little language being necessary. Any first-person declaration involving will not, the sculptural gap between the two bodies in terms of the recurrence of the figure, a total imaginary, sometimes filled with nothing but disdain for the other will. I guess it is domination. The point's ultimate non-linguistic origin or location in the explosion inside empty space of the wills that takes place at an anti-material level before any kind of sex between the figures could be considered. Sex really being a consequence of the wild, inexplicable space. The gap having an aesthetic quality that is my own understanding to make of living in the future or in other nightmares, unrelated to any kind of writing. Anyone living in disproportionate awareness of the chaos that is the gathering of intentional speech, within the possibly violent dance of being gathered as minimally two, they spitting and accusing one another in the gap that both holds them and defines an impossible difference. It's unclear how this could be heard as nothing. What the man is saying is a declaration of total war, and so exactly. The man being an innovator and also a threat, and aggressively misunderstood as a matter of general agreement to be not saying anything, whether or not the man believes himself to be writing and is consumed as a messenger. Imagining I get into trouble personally, sometimes it is possible to avoid the viciousness of white people, often because of money. Only in the middle of my life, apprehending myself, my gender as a different kind of target. When Terrence says a nigga can survive, he isn't talking about me. Taking getting into trouble as an idiom, I would be into a posture of warring at this time that can be ignited by disrespect. The twitchy readiness into which I have grown, standing in the kitchen, listening to war. I want to affirm I hear this man saying words. His life is so strong in reaching me. Let me survive without stealing. When he dies, he cannot be buried beside white corpses. His neighbors have barricaded their porches against his view. That's Du Bois from the Philadelphia Negro. The poem's called Go to Jail. Months later, only able later, for many months, holding the image of myself in the kitchen, an image of raising up out of the nothing feeling, which isn't not feeling at all. I don't feel nothing. I feel like I want to strangle somebody most of the time. Seeing the image as an energetic problem of not being raised up too, junky and at the ready, I'm saying, up and above the vagueness of knowing togetherness. There we were together learning. The spiritual and the literary should never be confused. I am not in my body. Acts of holding, not exactly trying to resolve how it is I'm involved in Chicago's war, though I'm interested in anticipating a certain kind of moral demand. Pussy, how you warring is meaningful to me in its digital strike or pluck that covers the time within which it becomes instantly possible to gather as the high frequency is withheld. The passion is in the stinginess of the strike, the tease. There are two definitional proposals with respect to the hi-hat in that song, I'd say. One allowing it to become drill. This is refrain or pattern. The other proposing singularity or arrest, something incredibly stupid or bad in that plinky anti-loop. It curls up around the spasmodic coffin from which it is technically and sonically a part, and the completely undanceable horror of this Ike pack. No one stops dancing. I am holding close to me Mei-mei's voice with me at all times when I'm thinking different problems with working or beginning with the non-relation between me and them. Always making an excuse for feeling close, scuttling away. Dancing is not an endorsement of violence, but of course it is. When dancing, holding also the problematics of uplift, I do feel spread out. I feel helpless and resent the sense that separating myself from feelings of love and enjoyment for the sake of so-called liberation is fucking us all up. Do I know myself to be a person who is stalked? Am I a killer? I can barely stand the convergence between Mei-mei's star book and what I'm trying to say about feeling empathy. You try to hold on to the visibility of this object and its location. Just as unbearable when the object is a form of personal power. Now I'm close. You're laughing at my orgasm joke, but it's not a joke. I ain't joking. From which I have learned to be irresolute. I think in units of $1,000. Each 1,000 allocated in a disorganized manner to the rubbish heap of my debts and obligations. This is a maintenance unit distinguishable from a unit of basic economic safety. However, I reject the notion that it's unrelated to survival. Derived from the extremity of my educational status, though not a direct result. Mechanisms through which debt is incurred include education, but can also be related to depressed wages, wage differentials, wages and bureaucratic delay. 90 days is an eternity to wait for $1,000. A bad child support regime, the entire lack of a system of affordable childcare or safe and effective public schooling for Black children. Bourgeois expectations regarding generational wealth is a secret killer. That and the fact that class war rages for decades beyond the first money. Norms of gendered responsibility and financial dependency through marriage are plainly dangerous. I wish grown people of all genders would stop talking to me about their fucking spouses. I'm gonna start asking, how much money do they make? Don't this nigger see me working? I think $1,000. I would not trade my law degree for anything though. Harvard Law School taught me to look at the ruling class, look at my marginality to it. I dealt myself into an art world where there was no bohemian, accepting its secret ruling class remnant. Economic violence is a term from which I feel dissociated. I dissociate myself from its use, being so far from poor, only desperate. I cannot see how violence encompasses my calculations or the irregularity of $1,000 transactions. 2 times 1,000 is debt service of 2 distinct types, 1/3 my take-home pay. Each time I make $1,000, it's time to pay back tuition. If I gig hard enough, I'll catch up this year. Income appears to me in fast-moving sheets of $1,000. Given my deficit and the way I bust ass, I can spend $11,000 in a month on the ledger. My mind is never blank. It is on the next check. Don't these niggas see me working? LOL, the irregularity of my thought, my vulgar $1,000 functions. I feel like that's time. Is that time?
I feel like we could hear more if you want to share, Simone, but it was also an incredibly generous and abundant reading so far.
I think that I am going to say thank you and move aside so that Mei-mei can have this remaining time.
And
She's waiting. She's waiting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're truly, truly grateful. And I'm really excited to hear these poems in correspondence and conversation with one another. While I'm introducing Mei-mei, Corey is going to place into the chat some links to purchase her most recent books. Mei-mei Berssenbrugge's newest book is A Treatise on Stars, which came out this year alongside a republication from New Directions of her 1989 work, Empathy. Continuously across her work, we follow and marvel at the speaker's consciousness of position, dimension, and proportion. Light, water, landscape of deserts and mesas especially appear throughout Berssenbrugge's work, and now stars and constellations become our objects of focus. I've been below all this time, she writes, and now I see stars. The direction and manner of looking in this work feels so acutely and particularly now a reminder of both singleness and interdependence, navigation and wandering, constancy and disappearance. Star, our perception of it, we remember, is a measure and experience of both time and place. The star, or what we see of it, is a visual artifact of something celestial and moving, which is how we come to the light year as a measure of spatial distance and a fathom as a unit of traversal and understanding. What happens in the distances and darkness is decidedly and often unfathomable, even as it is also so frequently radiant. Perhaps creativity, she writes, is the unfoldment of relations between objective and emotion in space. I experience a kind of synesthesia in the space-time of these poems, pleasure in the verbal, haptic, visual simultaneity of connection with solitude. There is a profound ecstasy of recognition surpassed only by the poet's grace of disattachment, of relinquishing our clinging habits. So thought is a form of organized light, she writes. And then I think of light as both uncontainable and capable of focus. And then I think of thought as such. And then, of course, the thinking must escape me. All that exists connects, she quotes, a compass I have found unfailing through this most remote and fractured time. It is a deep pleasure and honor to welcome Mei-mei Berssenbrugge to the Poetry Project.
I want to make sure I see myself. Okay, I think I'm on, but I don't see myself. I'm sorry. Okay. No, that didn't work. Well, thank you, Kyle, and I wish I could get the screen right. Thank you to the Poetry Project and old friendship. Thank you for your beautiful reading, Simone. It's true that for me it was love at first sight. Also, first with the Angel of Death, and then with you. And but I didn't know it was mutual. So thank you for the inspiration of our knowing each other. I'm going to read 3 poems from Treatise on Stars. I had an inspiration in writing this book to try to express one ecosystem between Earth and heaven and the stars. So first poem is Luke's, and it's in 4 parts. She does not distinguish spirit from body, which interweave via the senses. It begins with wonder, then interest. The light of mind and sunlight entwine in your eye, though separately each is unseen, like starlight without an object to fall on. Deep space is black. Inner life coalesces with daylight, a spectrum on which fluctuations of light from the object stimulate sight, while you simultaneously enhance your reception, until finally you see the ideal within the real. Your consciousness lovingly assimilates new events to enhance cognition that ensouls space. I present physical evidence where applicable, but my interest is in my informant and her words. I learn more about that eureka moment when intense phenomena becomes transparent to the ideal. Sorry about my coughing. Material and imaginary flow into each other through a crack of light, observation between worlds. Juxtaposition becomes a blend of unconscious and external event. The more distant the relation, the more emotional, poetic the perception. For my witness, bright physical light weakens the interpretive. But there are two emanations, one from the eye close to mind, and one from a star which conjoin. A close encounter inscribes such diffuse liminal boundaries of the imaginary. Psyche becomes increasingly collective as it assimilates with the gorgeous world. It's as if a star offered you the nourishing, ineffable light of a new realism between subject and object. That beings from outer space manifest to you physically is unproven in my field, but still true. Each account is recorded as fact in my notebook. Then I can travel up through light and become more intimate with its star. I wake and see out the window a ball of light swirling above the trees. A woman stands under the trees where certain plants grow. She knots leaves into a symbol using streamers of light. And as I watch, I know I'll remember. My window is the same as light going through it. Luminous is a better word than translucent. When I try to describe her, I draw a star. I saw stars like children's stickers on the window glass. I know if I draw one, I can go there. Darkness is light's resting state in deep space. Transparence can occur all at once, the way your face lights with understanding, or a wave passes you to Andromeda with the swiftness of near and far at the same time. Consciousness may be such a light source with metaphoric power. Thread is a feeling of spiritual connection. Sunlight is love. Language and energy interchange. We can experience a physical event by association, algorithm. A star visitor could be the attribute of such association. Seeing starlight is seeing the visible in the invisible, that fragile, imaginal cloth holding planet and existence together. When I ask if they're literally extraterrestrials or a metaphor from inner realms, she says there's no difference in significance. Their skies are full of life. She describes starlight as scalar, without properties of distance or time. Any spirit and matter she calls star walking, remote viewing, meditation, intuition, plants she was shown, and any soul possessing a certain shine she calls starlight. The power of relation came through their extraordinary yellow eyes, she tells me. You're looking into a star, convex, immense, flashing colors through opalescent, flowing nuclear fusion. I feel separated from home now. I look up at night sky with great longing. They showed me earth through their eyes. Their oneness extends to us, whereas I'm in the dark. Then it opens onto luminescence. There's a lot of snow. There's a lot of stars, huge, no horizon, and very bright. I see the Pleiades. I feel like a wolf looking toward home. Phew, a shooting star just dropped there onto snow, so I go over to it. A crystal has dropped on the snow and there's light, a face in the stone. It's as if I'm looking up through the sky and things are very clear, and I'm coming up through the ice. I've been below all this time, and now I see stars. I'm here in New Mexico, where we've had drought for many, many years, and Richard and I started going to this cabin in Maine, and I started bringing more green into my work. It's by a cove. So singing is also in 4 parts. All day I feel the approach of dolphins. Their thoughts are in my mind. When I swim, my cells attune to them, because oceans full of vibrations that transmit to water in my body. It's a repository of primordial data from space. All creatures in water can access the Akasha. Tones entering my cells transform into feeling, an awareness of 2 worlds at once. I send back my thought, picture, feeling, and together we form new vibrations of knowledge that had been dormant in me. They're here. I swim out of the cove toward them. So happy I hum. and their answering chorus reverberates across water. We know each other. One dolphin is still far below me. Her form takes shape as she rises silently in bright blue, motionless, sunlit. Thank you for showing yourself, fulfilling a deep longing within my deep memory. I empty my mind and listen for her reply, which comes as waves of emotion. A cloud surrounds me. I expand into its stillness and receive tones conveying information very fast. They teach me to hum, to whistle, and sing. Sound amplifies my body across open water. Even their joyous play has this sensation of creating space. And when they sleep, stars augment their frequencies. We converse by mind cell helixes of image and feeling. Cosmic legacy, cosmic extension imprint holographically on my heart neurons as dolphin empathy. There are sounds which can stop time, alter surroundings, or shift your dimension. Swimming, I lose my sense of place, even physicality, and connect with collective love. They teach me to join my aura with the cosmos by spiraling with me in sound star tetrahedrons, and to love those with whom we merge. Then being is healing through innocence when the animal becomes the teacher. One dolphin swims toward me. I open telepathically and respond. I practice this method of reflection to contact life forms in other space who are trying however they can to meet us. Sirius radiates high frequencies to lighten the dark, denser planets. Dolphins travel to and from such a planet through diagrams like songs on ocean floors. They wish us to participate in overlighting the collectivity of souls in our galaxy and ally with them to access the space sister brotherhood through these planetary vortices. Dolphins catalyze starlight to refresh water on Earth. Transference between species is both cellular and holographic or geometric. For example, my friend's body is 3D in front and 4D in the back. She exists across dimensions while appearing so ordinary in her yellow shirt and blue slacks. As we walk to the shore, memory is vibratory like DNA condensed light, she volunteers. You and I relate through our mutual past on Sirius in Glastonbury, Santa Fe. So I repeat their joyous staccato syllables. I listen to podcasts of no singers and tune to high pitches the Pleiades use for propulsion into our atmosphere using the star codes of dolphins. We've attributes and realities we're not aware of. Dolphins reside in these dimensions like dreams in oceans. They swarm within magnetic streams of other entities, angels we've invented, others heavens, cyclic destiny. I glimpse one jump from its energy band, attracted by my friend's intense aura. He shows me Earth's sister planet replicated by sound as we co-create it by singing, sitting in her yard gazing at the ocean under pine trees. There are messages in clouds, in wavelets on granite, cicadas and meadowlark calls. Space travelers materialize morphogenetically from local beauty and merge with us. They enable travel between time and stars by projecting tones just ahead of the consciousness of the person migrating. The way dolphins pass me so fast, I don't see the bubbles until they're far out of sight. A wonder is in 5 parts. One summer, walking from our house after dinner, stars make the sky almost white. My awe is like blindness, wonder exchanges for sight. Star by star comprises a multiplicity like thought, but quiet, too dense for any dark planet between, while single stars are a feature of the horizon at dusk, caught at the edge of the net of gems. Transparence hanging on its outer connectedness casts occurrence as accretion, filling in, of extravagant, euphoric blooming. Then being as spirit and as matter is known, here to there. I go home and tell my children to come out and look. The souls of my 2 children fly up like little birds into branches of the Milky Way, chatting with each other, naming constellations, comparing crystals and fire. They exclaim at similarities between what they see in the sky and on our land. So by wonder, they strengthen correspondence between sky and home. Earth is made from this alchemy of all children, human and animal, combined with our deep gratitude. I see his dark shape moving and shifting against night's screen of stars. My little girl reaches for his lighted silhouette. Human beings are thought upward and flown through by bright birds. We believe stars are spirits of very high frequency. We feel proud our animals come from stars so dense in meaning, close to sacrament. We describe passing time in stories about animals. Star movement is named for seasonal migrations of deer, wolf, hummingbird, dolphin. And as animals, stars still walk among us. Our snake, Olivia, for example, tells me there's no conflict between humans and rain because resource is all around us. A coyote loved night, and he loved to gaze at the stars. I noticed one star in Cassiopeia. I talked to her, and each night she grew brighter and closer until she came to life here as a corn snake my friend. She looks like a dancer on tiptoe, stepping around pink star blossoms, surging up after rain. Constellations are experienced emotionally as this play of self through plant and animal, symbols and values. A dream atmosphere flows. Everything represented is sacred. Being moves in accord, not of time. Returning from the Milky Way, she realized crystals had fallen from her bag and looked up. My story links a journey to sky with the creation of stars, in which place accommodates becoming. Chama River flows north-south to the horizon, then straight up through the Milky Way, like water moving beneath a riverbed that's dry. Abiquiu Mountain, El Rito Creek, coyote, snake, rainbow and rain, spider and hummingbird identify equivalent spiritual placements above. So wherever we go, there is company, nurture from every star in our regard. I start up to ask my birds to return home and find our land continuous with a starry sky mapped as entities who set into motion occurrence here. Place awaits an imprint from this potential. Even though starlight arriving now already happened, what happens is a depth of field before and after drought, fire, storm, disruption. I move at high speed, but I'm still standing beside my house in the dark. To go there, I find the place on our mesa that correlates to their tree in the sky and leap up. Space stirs as star trilliums emerge through darkness like humus. I ask one blossom to please in the future renew these bonds between sky and my children, so they will always hold light in the minerals of their eyes. Sun on its nightly underground journey weaves a black thread between white days on the cosmic loom, like a chord or resonance between new experience and meaning. The origin of stars expresses the underlying warp of this fabric. Summer solstice draws a diagonal across my floor, precession, weaving ground of informing spirit. So therefore, life is fundamental to stars. The reverse is well known. That's why I don't use a telescope, star charts, or glasses when I go out. I think of a place, I wait, then fly to my children. When the stargate is raised, there is a narrow door between sky and ground. But when I arrive, I find the sky solid. I can't break through to visit my starbirds and stand there wondering before dawn. Then sky vault lifts. Maybe I can slip through to find the Milky Way and see its blossoms. Then our sun appears in the crack and pushes through to the day. It's so bright, so hot, I step back and cover my eyes. I hear my mother calling. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mei-mei. As you were finishing, there was a chorus of people in the chat who were commenting about how special it was to listen to your poems while looking at the moon and the stars from their respective places. And it was so wonderful to feel so close to you while you were reading, and to Simone as well. We are now going to open the Zoom. Folks will be able to turn on their microphones, and we'll keep this open for about 10 minutes. So until 9:15 Eastern time. And if folks want to share their appreciation and admiration vocally or in the chat, please feel encouraged to do so. Thank you so much again to Simone and to Mei-mei both.